Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. First Nation leaders in Saskatchewan are speaking out following the Indigenous Services Canada and KPMG forensic audit of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations. Saskatoon Tribal Council Chief Mark Arcand hosted a news conference on Friday. Arcand is calling for accountability for the $34 million in questionable spending. Arcand addressed several aspects of the 9 allegations covered by the audit. He urged, quote, the corporation to start taking responsibility for their actions.
We look at massive payouts to former employees. We look at vice chiefs that were on leave that is questionable in funding. Who is that? Which of those vice chiefs is going to stand up and say, I was on leave, it was me. This is what I did. Here's the proof. We need people to start being honest with our people and start saying, this is the decision that I made. I was in charge. But they're not doing that. We will not know the truth unless somebody stands up and says, the people in charge have to start telling us the truth.
APTN News has learned the Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for New Brunswick, Joanna Bernard, has resigned from the Child and Families portfolio. Bernard says difficulties working with the National Children's Chiefs Commission led to her resignation. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
In a letter obtained by APTN News, Bernard says her resignation is the result of the National Children's Chiefs Commission constantly trying to sideline the AFN as they prepare to negotiate a long-term agreement on First Nations child welfare reform with Ottawa. The letter says the NCCC has repeatedly disrespected the AFN and my role as portfolio holder and stalled our efforts to work together. It also says, we have seen this through the lack of respect to the development of our Memorandum of Understanding, AFN staff being asked to leave NCCC meetings when other organizations are permitted to stay, last-minute invites, and not providing materials, time, or space for the AFN Secretariat to support me from a technical level. Chief Pauline Frost of the Vuntut-Gwitchin in Yukon chairs the now 19-member commission.
Working as First Nations across the country, it's not advisable for us to go out and divide ourselves, because that's what Canada wants. So our objective is really to start working towards reform. And the accusations and the comments is really not reflective of our views, and we've made it very clear right from the get-go.
First Nations Child and Family Caring Society Executive Director Cindy Blackstock told APTN News her organization has a good relationship with the NCCC. This includes working together to meet a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal order issued last month telling Ottawa, the AFN, the NCCC, and Caring Society to get back to the table to negotiate a long-term reform agreement.
So we've been working with technical experts across the country, including those at the National Children's Chiefs Commission, to come up with a consultation document, which should be ready in a matter of days. And then that'll be provided to leadership and experts in the region to provide feedback into that plan.
Frost reiterated that if the parties negotiating with Ottawa are divided, it will only further hurt First Nations children.
We need to work together because the solutions are there. And we've been at this far too long, and children are still being, imagine the child that was born 18 years ago, 18 years now, 18 years we've been at this, and the child's now aged out of the system and still hasn't been provided supports and services.
Bernard originally agreed to an interview with APTN News, but later declined. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Politicians in Winnipeg are speaking out after recent acts of vandalism at the constituency office, windows of 2 First Nations cabinet ministers. But despite one affected minister saying the issue should cause concern, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew has remained fairly silent. APTN Sav Jonesa brings us this update.
Little following a number of attacks affecting 2 First Nation cabinet ministers in Winnipeg that have resulted in broken windows and fire damage. Firefighters have responded to 4 fires at MLA Bernadette Smith's constituency office since the beginning of August. Last weekend, MLA Nahani Fontaine's constituency office had its windows smashed in. Police are investigating but say they have nothing to share. At an unrelated event Tuesday, Fontaine addressed the issue.
The fact that Minister Smith's office has been vandalized, as well as my own, I think should concern everybody.
She says no staff were harmed and they are currently working from home.
We can't say much. It is being investigated by Major Crimes. So, I have faith that Major Crimes is doing what they need to do to make sure that our offices are safe and that every constituency office is safe.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew has not responded to repeated requests by APTN News for comment about the vandalism. His office would not say if he will publicly address the situation. Leader of the opposition, Progressive Conservative Obi Khan, took to Facebook to denounce the actions he says create division. Khan says Manitobans have the right to demand better from their elected officials, but this is not the way. Smashing windows, harassment, or anything of that nature is never the solution. Both Smith and Fontaine are First Nations women. Both are ministers in Kinew's cabinet. In late August, Fontaine shared a video on social media addressing threats and online hate she's received while in office. One handwritten note stated Fontaine needs to be scalped, hogtied, and fired from job now. She captioned the video saying that for some politicians, quote, the violence is relentless. Essentially, we're told to just put up with the abuse. NDP Member of Parliament Leah Gazan says that doesn't cut it.
Certainly, I think that any situation of violence needs to be taken very seriously.
Gazan, who is also First Nation, says though it is a privilege to be a politician, it does come with personal safety risks. She had her own office windows smashed in Winnipeg last year, but says House of Commons gave her proper support.
I think it's time that members of parliament or members of legislative assemblies need to be provided with the supports they need to be safe. We need to ensure that any elected official is safe doing their job so that they can focus on doing that job.
Smith could not be reached for comment. We will continue to follow this story as it develops. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, all week we've been covering incidents of vandalism and harassment affecting two female First Nation provincial cabinet ministers in Manitoba. Firefighters responded to 4 small fires, as you heard, at one minister's office. The other minister had their front windows smashed in. Premier Wab Kinew, until recently, had been rather silent. When we caught up with him at an unrelated press conference early Thursday, he says the government doesn't speak publicly about safety issues for security reasons, but he denounces extremism on all sides.
There's no place for violence in our politics. And there's no place for threats of a physical nature or intimidation in our politics either. If we focus on the things that we have in common, it is going to lead to a safer society. It's going to lead to a society where everyone can reach their full potential. And we also have a responsibility as people in the public sphere not to amplify divisions in the society. This is not going to be breaking news, but you can't firebomb anywhere in our society. Doesn't matter if it's an MLA's office or if it's a park building or if it's a business or if it's a community center. No firebombing, please.
Protests against Quebec's proposed Bill 97 to modernize the forest industry continued. The Assembly of First Nations in Quebec and Labrador have united with multiple unions, band councils, and environmental organizations. As Savannah Craig reports, the groups say this version of the bill is unacceptable.
Tensions have been high between some First Nations groups and Quebec's forestry industry for months. This is due to Bill 97, a legislation which intends to modernize Quebec's forestry industry. Quebec has called in a new forestry minister to handle the bill, but many First Nations councils and groups are contesting Bill 97 over what they say is a lack of consultation with First Nations. This guardian of the territory says he hasn't had any contact with the new minister, Jean-François Simon.
Depuis Mamou, on n'a eu aucun contact, aucun gouvernement, membre du gouvernement.
Dave Petitquay has been staging protests in the form of blockades and sending eviction notices to logging companies in response to Bill 97. Petitquay is part of Mamu First Nation, self-described as a coalition of guardians of the territory and hereditary chiefs that do not represent elected chiefs and councils. A new development in the fight against Bill 97 has been announced. The Assembly of First Nations of Quebec and Labrador, alongside unions representing more than 20,000 forestry workers, environmental groups, and Réseau ZEC, which represents hunting, fishing, and camping zones in Quebec, have put forth a letter denouncing Bill 97. One of the union's signatories says Quebec shouldn't move forward with the bill.
Il est mort et enterré, ce projet de loi-là. Il doit être mort et enterré. On doit reprendre l'exercice avec transparence, parce que ça, c'est le grand défaut de tout le processus qui a eu lieu. Le déficit de transparence.
L'aspect de base, c'est la reconnaissance de nos droits ancestraux et titres.
AFN-QL Regional Chief Francis Vero Paul says while the current forestry regime needs a change, it cannot happen with the current version of Bill 97.
It cannot be made without preserving the biodiversity, our way of living, the sustainability of our forests. And as of now, the Bill 97 is really unbalanced. It just prioritizes the exploitation of the forest.
The need for a change is what's pushing Quebec to modernize the industry.
Vous entendez les gens présentement dire que ça n'a pas d'allure sur le terrain, c'est l'ancien régime forestier. On n'a fait aucun changement à ce régime qui est là depuis des années.
But some want more than just a change to the forestry regime.
C'est l'actuel régime qui devrait être retiré comme il faut. Pas le 87. Le 87, ça vient carrément empiéter nos droits ancestraux, qui vient tuer aussi certains exercices qu'on exerce dans des territoires spécifiques.
Petitquay says MAMO was not approached by the AFN-QL to counter Bill 97. The forestry minister did not respond to our request for an interview before our deadline. Petitquay says he will continue to exercise his rights.
C'est un exercice de souveraineté ancestrale qu'on a fait.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
And in a major development on Thursday, the Quebec Premier François Legault repealed the bill. It will not be moving ahead. You can find more on our website, aptnnews.ca. Time for a quick break, and then we'll tell you about a unique way the Slave Metis Nation is marking the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Welcome back. There are many events happening in honor of Orange Shirt Day on September 30th across the country. APTN's Tina House has a story about a community in North Vancouver who's unveiling a unique tribute to honor this day.
It's a day of celebration as the Slave Metis Nation in North Vancouver unveil their Orange Sidewalk, honoring the Every Child Matters campaign, started by the Orange Shirt Society. Phyllis Webstad is the founder of the organization, and it's her orange shirt story that started the movement. For Chief Justin George, it's a time of reflection on what this project symbolizes.
You know, it's mixed emotions. You know, but it's a beautiful day because it's really about recognition and really honoring, you know, the dark history. But more importantly, it's how our elders and ancestors were just so resilient. And I mentioned earlier, you know, mentally, physically, emotionally, so hurt. And it's a dark history for our people.
Candy Thomas is the artist who designed the sidewalk, and she says she is honored to do this important work and create this design.
Thunderbird, he's embracing the babies that never made it home from residential school.
And for Chief George, whose own father, the late Chief Leonard George, was taken to a residential school at just 5 years old. He says, "We have come a long way, but so much more healing needs to take place."
But the beauty of today is around healing and moving forward, and really that's the strength of our elders and ancestors. You know, they couldn't break their spirit, and it's that light that they brought forward to the next generations. And you know, everybody's different in their healing journey, you know, and so there's still one suffering and in need of that support, and we have to be aware of that. But as a collective and as a whole, I think we've come a long ways.
The Orange Shirt Society has launched 15 orange sidewalks across Canada so far. Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
The North Slave Metis Alliance recently held their first gathering for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. APTN video journalist Bruce De La Cruz has more from the North.
Sharing food together is one of the oldest and most
North Slave Metis Alliance members in Yellowknife gathered together for their first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation community gathering.
This came from member involvement. I think it's only been a stat holiday the last few years, but I think it's just a great opportunity for us to come together and you know, support our elders, support our members.
Alan Harmon Jr. is the vice president of the North Slave Metis Alliance and is a second-generation residential school survivor. He says they chose to have the gathering on September 19th to coincide with Pauli Day, which celebrates a landmark Métis victory in Ontario in the 90s.
It's nationally recognized in the Federal Court of Canada, and it's basically a template on who has Section 35 Aboriginal rights as Métis. So I think it makes sense that we do it on this day in anticipation for September 30th, just to reflect on not just truth and reconciliation for all Indigenous people, but distinctly the Métis people.
Harmon talks about what reconciliation looks like for the North Slave Metis Alliance, who trace their origins back to 18th century unions and have been a recognized nonprofit since 1996.
It means reconciling with the governments, that includes the government of the Northwest Territories and the federal government of Canada, and working together on important things that affect our communities. And working together in lockstep, so we're a fair and equitable partner at the table, because that's important for us to move forward and for our kids to have a future.
One young community member spoke up and told APTN News what he would do to help survivors of residential schools.
We should give them lots of hugs, high fives, and give them presents on Orange Shirt Day.
Jess Smart, the Lands and Culture Manager, was key in getting the gathering off the ground.
Tonight we just got together and had dinner together, and it was really nice. There wasn't any planned events or activities. It was just come, gather, meet community members that you might not know, spend time with your family.
As a non-Indigenous person, she explains how she commits to being an ally for the North Slave Metis Alliance.
Truth and reconciliation, from what I've learned from this community, means so many different things to every community. It's such a personalized thing. And for me, I'm just committed to learning and unlearning every day and keeping an open mind. And like you said, I'm not Indigenous, but I'm so grateful to feel so welcomed in by this community.
Mark Whitford, president of the North Slave Metis and a residential school survivor, summed up the night's events while looking ahead to the future.
I think we made headway. Maybe not the biggest headway, but we made headway in some very important areas, and it laid foundations of where we can now springboard to our next step. And our next step is going to result with us in a true reconciliation with Canada.
Bruce De La Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
A number of Indigenous people were honored by the Governor General recently. That story's coming up after the break. Welcome back. Governor General Mary Simon granted a number of Order of Canada designations this week. 7 Indigenous people are among the latest recipients. APTN's Fraser Needham caught up with 2 of them during the awards ceremony at Rideau Hall in Ottawa.
Governor General Mary Simon handed out 60 Order of Canada awards on Thursday. Josephine Bacon was appointed an Officer of the Order of Canada for her efforts in revitalizing the Innu language through poetry, teaching, and translation.
It's the most important to speak my language, my own language, to be a really new woman. If I don't speak my language, I'll be me, but without speaking my identity.
Bacon says preserving the language has become more challenging over the years as young people move away from land-based roles like hunting and fishing to Western jobs such as doctors and lawyers. But she says she has no doubt the language will survive.
Oui, bien sûr, oui. It has to be. That's why I'm teaching. That's why I speak to young people, so it's sacred. It's like going to the church. It's very important.
Leona Irons Cummings has also been appointed as a member of the Order of Canada for her contributions as Executive Director of the National Aboriginal Land Managers Association on the Curve Lake First Nations near Peterborough, Ontario.
This kind of hard work, we have to build, capacity and knowledge to our people, especially in land management. And so it's a tough job because we have to abide by 3 types of laws. And my understanding is that we have to contend with the natural law, our traditional laws, and then the legal laws.
Irons Cummings says Indigenous land management can be a complex process, and this is why her organization takes a ground-up approach to training.
We've developed a certification program for land managers to be certified in land management, and we also offer specialized training, which is takes things specific to land management, and urban reserve, additions to reserve is one of our key toolkits. So if a nation comes to us, we'd certainly, help them in understanding the process of those kinds of things.
Kent Monkman.
Some of the other Indigenous Order of Canada recipients this week include artist Kent Monkman, Thomas Cunningham Wilson, and educator Richard Hill. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
And congrats to them all. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this weekend. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy Miigwech. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.